Now we come to the portion of the service before we do our Bible study that we talk about end times news and prophecy as we do each week. And this is update number 58. We want to welcome our online church and subscribers around the world. We hit the 2,000 mark earlier this week, so it's cool to see how this channel is growing. So we thank you for partnering with us and joining with us. Over the past several weeks, we've talked about what's going to happen in September. And again, it's going to be a big month when it comes to the news and events and what's going to happen in the world. This week, we'll start the escalation of the financial crisis. And this is something that has been predicted by many, starting really at the end of this week's, on Sunday, the 13th, is the end of the what they call the SHEMITAH year. Without putting too much emphasis on that, there's a lot of background stories and history that has proven statistically what this comes about. And the different cycles and the giant stock market crashes that happened each time this has gone on. According to Israeli National News and another couple other sources on E-News today, the Times of Israel blames the SHEMITAH for the financial disaster. So this particular newspaper goes into the Jewish agricultural rest and kind of getting the history behind it. But they also had propagated the idea that the Jewish SHEMITAH year has a history of culminating with the global financial disaster. Every time it's happened. And so the concept, again, it's still maintained within Israel, the SHEMITAH year, according to it's the last year of the 7-year agricultural cycle of a Jewish calendar. So that's kind of the idea behind it. But within this article talked about the different crises that have happened. It's kind of given a list of those things, from the crash that happened in Wall Street in 1987 to the 9/11 terror attacks to the different bankruptcies that have happened, and also on that same year in September 29th, where the down in the stock market fell by over 770 points, which was still today one of the greatest stock market crashes of all time. We're starting to see those things escalate over the last several weeks and months, according to the financial crashes in Europe, in China, in Hong Kong. So within this particular year, coming to an end on Sunday, on the 13th, the Indian paper drew a parallel culmination of last week's major crash on Black Monday. So according to the Times of India, the year draws a close to the global financial marketeers on the edge of the people. They're searching for this word SHEMITAH. So there's the stats that were done on how many times that people are searching for this on Google, and it's off the charts, and how many people are trying to find out more information. There's a video that was put out 2 months ago concerning this particular topic as well in great length, and the chief of one of the lead brokerages in India that related the timing of the biblical concept and the financial market collapse is scary and cannot be ignored. While it can't be ignored, even mathematicians are getting into this and finding out the history behind it. And this one came out of Breaking News of Israel on Tuesday, where the mathematicians are looking at the areas behind it throughout time. In fact, they had 144 years of data that they've looked at, going back to 1871, and the particular mathematician has seen all the stats that have lined up. And he says, being a statistician, if somebody makes a claim, then statistically it should hold up. And that's what they've been able to see time and time again, is that this particular time frame, the SHEMITAH year, is always held up. There's always been a disaster that's happened. And here in Australia on Tuesday, actually it was Wednesday, Australia has posted the lowest quarterly growth in 4 years. The second quarter, and it's that fading mining investment boom and failing to export revenue has put a brake onto the economy. So even though we haven't fully felt the impact of it totally yet, Australia again has ridden one of the longest economic expansions in modern history, running 96 quarters without recession. And so it's kind of, we have a really good here in Australia compared to other parts of the world. But the Australian dollars, they lowered providing some offset tourism and educational export. The outlook remains fragile with further job losses in the manufacturing industry. So we're going to see this thing have a ripple effect around the world. So again, we say these things not to say, here, thus saith, and we're going to predict what's going to happen. I'd rather you be understanding what's going to happen, even if it doesn't happen, at least you're aware of it, versus, hey, we never told you what was going to happen. At least you're prepared. Hopefully these things never come to pass. But we want you to be aware of these sort of things. Going on to the Middle East, the Breitbart report on Wednesday, top Iranian general says that the military buildup won't stop until the full annihilation and destruction of Israel. So this is continual rhetoric. They're stepping up the game plan even more. The United States and Israel should know that the Islamic Revolution continue to enhance its preparedness until it overthrows Israel and liberates Palestine. So the top general there said on Wednesday that the leading military drills, which involve some 225,000 personnel in Tehran, and they've been working with Russia, and some of these drills. And so they're going to continue to not only just defend their own country, but also all oppressed people around the world, specifically those countries that are standing in the forefront of confrontation with the Zionists, which they call Israel, referring to Iran's consistent support of the terrorist groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah, and also the Assad's regime in Syria. So he said that the only way to deal with Israel is full annihilation and destruction of the Zionist regime. And so he encouraged the Palestinians to continue to struggle against Tel Aviv. Even Turkey's behind that and wanting to overtake Jerusalem. So you're hearing this rhetoric. And it's not just off comments once in a while. This is like a daily occurrence that these guys are doing. And so, as we said, these are pieces of the puzzle that it sounds like Ezekiel 38, 39 are all coming together. Not saying it's going to happen right now, but the alliances, the pieces of the puzzle are coming there. And then on a separate issue, again, it's actually on the same issue on Wednesday, is where the Iranian nuclear deal reached the number of commitments by the Congress that needed for President Obama to veto a motion of disapproval without having to worry about the possibility of being overturned. So it's already passed that. The Congress is ready to pass this deal. Also, in speaking of Palestine, John Kerry made a statement the other day that he believes that peace talks, after you've already backstabbed Israel with this nuclear deal, he wants to have this peace talks to continue with Israel and Palestine. And he says it on the comments the day after Benjamin Netanyahu declared that he is ready to resume talks with the Palestinians. France, as you know, has tried to put forth some deals on the table and try to negotiate and put everyone there. Saying that is working on a possible resolution at the UN that would set negotiating parameters and establish a time period. And so there's international pressures that are mounting on Israel to resume the talks. And it has the main chairman who is continuously imposed of Palestine preconditions on the talks. So again, part of the preconditions, I believe, on the Israeli side is stop throwing your missiles and rockets and killing innocent people. That would be a precondition. Stop your terrorist attack in Israel and killing innocent people. That would be a precondition. But these are some things that the Palestinians do not get. We bring this up because as these talks are going to happen, they're negotiations, you can see how easily this is the backbone of what the Antichrist could do. In setting these peace talks and having this agreement, a 7-year agreement, which of course he's going to break halfway through in the middle period. But it's not far-fetched to see how close we are to getting someone to come in there and set this accord deal, a peace deal for peace and security for Israel. We're there. We're on the cusp of it. Also, part of the UN, and this will take us into a couple components about dealing with the UN this coming month. But they've drafted a resolution. This came out of the Yahoo News on Thursday, raising the Palestinian flag at the United Nations that will be adopted this next week. So on September 10th, the Thursday time in the States and Friday time here, they have all these measures almost certain to garner the majority of the 193 nation form. So they have almost all the votes that they really need to push forth, really for the recognition of Palestine as a state. And so once adopted, they have several days to carry out the decision. Possibly they're trying to get it so that they can have a formal flag-raising ceremony during Abbas's visit during the whole UN General Assembly. And this would, as they say, be a very symbolic thing, but it's another step to solidify the pillars of the Palestinian state in the international area that gives our people a small hope that the international community is still supporting the independent state of Palestine. So you're getting the world to say, hey, we want to recognize Palestine, but we don't want to recognize Israel. Abbas, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, amongst other main world leaders. In fact, if you were to look out the scenario of Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Psalm 83, all those leaders are coming to the UN this month for the General Assembly. And so even Pope Francis is going to make his much anticipated address, and we'll get into that in just a moment, on the 25th. And they've already come out and recognized Palestine as a state. One of the other key world leaders that is coming to the table at the UN is Putin. He hasn't been there for the last 10 years, but this time he's coming. It's all coming together, my friends. The big agenda that's going to happen at the end of this month is this new world order that they're going to implement. It's ready to go. The Agenda 2030 is what they call it. So this is the blueprint for the new world order with the help of the Pope. So the core document that was finalized in this past week, and this came quite a few different news sources that talk about this, but this one came out of the Right Side News website. And so what is this document starting out? It was going to create a huge stir, especially among those who are concerned about the ambitions and the globalists. The entire planet is going to be committed to work toward 17 sustainable development goals and 169 specific sustainable development targets. And there's been a total media blackout concerning all this as well. This agenda is going to take the principles that was laid out in Agenda 21 to a whole new level. It's going to be the blueprint for global governance. That's the agenda behind this. And so every nation on the planet is going to be signing up for this agenda. The general population of the planet is going to be told that this is voluntary and that it's ending poverty and fighting climate change and hugging trees. But fortunately, or actually unfortunately, there's such positive spin on this sort of agenda that people are not going to be able to see through what's really behind it. In fact, the UN website, the Secretary General Ban Moon, he says, the United Nations General Assembly today approved a resolution sending a draft of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to the members of the state adoption later on this month, bringing an international community at the cusp of a decision that they can help realize. He goes on to say that today's the start of a new era. We have traveled a long way together to reach this turning point. And so he's recounting the international community that has taken 15 years to get to this particular landmark Millennium Development Goals. And if it's a universal agenda, where does that leave those who do want to be a part of it? How will they assure that no one will be left behind if there are some nations or groups of people not willing to go along with their plan? Again, as we mentioned, the heart of this particular agenda is 17 main sustainable goals. For example, some of them is like ending poverty in all its forms everywhere. Ending hunger to achieve food security and improved nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Reduce inequality within and amongst countries. You can easily see how that one's going to turn out. But what all these kind of buzzwords really mean, especially to the lead, For instance, what does sustainable development actually mean, and how does the UN plan to ensure that it will be achieved globally? So again, it's just this rhetoric. They're not going to just come out and say it's the New World Order. That's kind of in-your-face confrontational. But when you say it's sustainable development, that sounds a little easier to swallow, right? More acceptable to the general population. Needless to say, there's not going to be any room for individual liberty or freedom, or capitalism for that matter as well. So, in fact, UN's number one sustainable development officially has essentially publicly admitted those sort of things as well. But on the 25th, the Pope is traveling to New York. He's going to do a big mass during the day there, but he's also going to be opening the address at the conference where the 2030 agenda will be launched. And so he will bring and urging all humanity to support this UN resolution. And the key is don't be fooled. This 2030 agenda is a blueprint for a new world order. So it's going to be a dangerous deal, but it's all part of biblical prophecy, how we're starting to see these things, because it's going to be a one world government, one world currency, a one world religion. This is all setting up for that. And then the last item before we do our Bible study, again, many of you have heard about the issue that's gone on in Kentucky with this gal who refused to do a marriage license for a gay couple. And her name is Kim Davis. And she was told by a federal judge that she's going to be bailed and until she complied with this order to issue these marriage license. And, of course, she said, no, I'm not going to. So she's been locked up. She's gotten counsel. But I love her stance as still a new Christian. She came to the Lord back in 2011. But she said this, I'm very steadfast in what I believe. I don't leave my conscience and my Christian soul at my vehicle when I come into work and pretend something that I'm not. It's easy to talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? So she's putting her faith to the test. The council, again, has said in this report, it's outrageous. This came out of the Fox News report. And he says, if this country came down to this, where a judge jails someone like Kim Davis for their religious conviction, then we have lost our religious liberty. Well, my friends, when Barack Obama got elected, there goes your religious liberty. It went down the tube there. But Kim Davis, again, has become the first Christian American in America to be jailed as a result of the Supreme Court decision that legalized gay marriage. And she says this, I've counted the cost. I'm prepared to go to jail. It's never been about a gay or lesbian issue. It's about upholding the Word of God and believing what it says and not bowing down to what the courts say. She's, by the way, an elected official. She was elected last November, taking the place of her mom, who was in that position for 40 years. So she's got a great standing history with that family and that community there. She can only be removed by impeachment or a recall. Okay, she's very popular in that community and also in her state in general. That's why the federal government got involved in this particular case. It's that these radical homosexual activists were not just wanting to get a marriage license, kind of like that bakery that in Oregon, they declined to bake a cake for a homosexual marriage. You know, they could have gone to another bakery down the corner to do it. There's another agenda behind this. And again, they're demanding that she gives the license. And so, again, they could have received this particular marriage license in any other community. And so the Supreme Court issued this sort of ruling because the states and the people in general are against the homosexual marriage. It's been voted down every single time it's been on the ballot. Every single time. So, in order to get it passed, you go bypass the will of the people. Let's get it to a handful of judges and make it a law that are part of the whole New World Order. And so there's this, even Justice Roberts said that this is going to cause a big uproar, and we've definitely seen that, this tyranny that's coming out there. it's not a homosexual issue when it comes down to it. It's a power grab. It's about control to get these people to step in line with the will of the state regardless of the beliefs. So whose belief are we going to allow to become law? So obviously someone else's belief, not the will of the people. So we're going to see more of these issues come up. You know, it's an attack against Christianity. Even though this lady's a Democrat, it's not a Democrat or Republican issue. She's a Christian. This was what the issue is about. Homosexuals have the right to live as they choose, but they don't have the right to silence those who disagree with them. And by the way, the wrath of the militant LGBT community has threatened this family. So it's okay to put death threats on a family, but it's not okay to say, no, we don't agree with your lifestyle. Something's wrong with that picture there. Anyways, the persecution of Christians is going to become more and more often, and this is just the beginning. But it's an opportunity for the gospel to get out there. She's witnessing not only to people in the jail, but to hear her testimony in the news media. It's exciting to see. And so people need to hear about the love and the grace and the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. And so we need to pray for her and others that are going to be going through those difficult times. Amen? And that concludes today's update.